Hi there, welcome to Masterclass 3 of Communicating Like a Leader. I'm Mahibi, I'm the C Coach, and welcome back. So let's take a look at what's in store in this module. So, we're going to start our journey to becoming more human centered in our communications. We've learnt the fundamentals. We know what effective communications looks and feels like, both for us and the personal persons involved in the interactions or the communication piece. And now you're going to learn the secret to elevating beyond that. What is it that leaders are tapping into in terms of developing their communication skills? And then I'm going to share with you a 7-step framework that's going to support you to plan your communications effectively. So let's look at being human-centered with intentionality. So before we start, again, we're going to do a reflective exercise. So write down a few ideas. What do you think it means to be human-centered in your communications? Just take a moment, pause, write down your ideas. Okay, welcome back. Let's get going. So, we're going to explore this concept of intentionality today. And we're going to look at the difference between intentionality as this new concept of being human centered in our communications. And we're also going to understand how it's different to intention because we're very used to communicating with intention. So, what does communicating with intention really mean? It means that we are focused on an outcome. We are goal led. We're looking at what it is we're looking to achieve, whether that's on our own or in a collective. We're looking at the accomplishment. And it's really about the what. So we're framing goals, we're framing objectives. And essentially, when we're communicating with intention, we're communicating about something that is long term. So people understand what it is that we are working towards. There's questions that we ask when we are communicating with intention, which is about the what. So we may ask questions like, what do we want to achieve? What is the desired outcome? What does success look like at the end? You might be working towards a 3-year or a 5-year program. So, what is it that we are all envisioning when we think about that end state? And how will we measure success? So we're really understanding the qualitative outcome and how we get there. What's the progress, milestones, or the quality outputs that we're looking for? It's the what. And then we move on to comparing this with intentionality. So I promised you in the first module when we set the foundations that we would be moving from being outcome and goal led in our communications to being mindset and feelings driven, really understanding and connecting to human requirements, human needs when we are going through change. Because when we're communicating with people, we're looking at essentially where they are now and where we want to take them to. So, why do leaders need to utilize this idea of intentionality and be human centered? We know that when we are growing and developing as a leader, we need to do something different. There needs to be a shift that allows us to keep growing into our leadership role. What's worked for us in the past might not necessarily work for us now and longer term when we think about our leadership responsibilities. So, generally, we are quite comfortable with the idea of being what led, so looking at the goal and the outcome. But leaders understand that this shift needs to happen in their style, in their attitude, in their approach. So you're taking people on a journey And it's the how we do that in addition to the what. And we're not replacing the what or the intention, but we are adding an additional element here, which is allowing leaders to really connect with people. So when we're looking at intentionality, what we are focusing on is a mental shift in the person or the persons that we are communicating with, that we're interacting with. So we want to understand how we can move someone's feelings, how we can potentially change their response by the key messaging that we might be using. Because by utilizing key messages, we can facilitate a mindset shift in someone. It also can be that when we are able to take someone on a mindset shift, we can actually invoke the responses or the actions that we need or the business needs to move us towards the goal, the objective, an outcome, a desired outcome. So really tapping into people and all of the core skills that we've already talked about, utilizing your active listening, being empathetic, being open, all of the core skills we looked at in the previous video, they are all the sum to supporting intentionality. So let's have a further look at how intentionality supports us on a day-to-day. So if we're thinking about all of these different elements of intentionality that focuses around that mental state shift of someone's feelings, their emotions, their mind frame, maybe their responses or actions, why are we doing this? How does it support us as a leader? It's really important to understand why actually intentionality is so important to us so that we can start utilizing it more in our communications. Well, the first thing is it helps us to approach difficult conversations. So we talk about avoiding conflict or managing conflict. What we're really addressing here is how we can manage those difficult conversations. And if we understand or are prepared to understand what a person or person's response might be, then we can understand what language might resonate more with that person, what forum would be best to talk to them in, the timing. What we say to someone will invoke a response or a reaction, whether that's their thoughts, their feelings, their emotions. It's also a great way to provide constructive and relevant feedback. So there's different models of doing this, but when we're providing constructive or relevant feedback to people, it's personal. So if we want to empower someone, we want to ensure that what we are communicating to them is going to empower them. Maybe you've seen that they've had a lack of confidence over the last few months. They haven't hit their targets, but you want to provide constructive feedback. You don't want to bring that person down, but you want to empower them to change. How you communicate that message is really important to get to the outcome of that person feeling empowered to make the change. You can say to someone, you've had 5 years of incredible performance. You've had a blip. It's okay. We can see that in the last quarter, you weren't able to meet your targets because we've had a lot of change that's been going on here. Yeah, I'm a bit disappointed that you weren't able to manage that change, but tell me what's happening for you. What's going on for you that you're not able to deal with the change that's happening in the organization that's affected your targets? Because we both know you can do this. That's very different to saying, you've done a terrible job the last quarter. What is going on? So really tapping into and connecting into that mindset. And that's just one example, right, of where we can provide feedback to invoke a particular emotion or feeling. Delivering unwanted or unexpected updates intentionality also supports us. So maybe you need to put someone on a performance review. Maybe you do need to give them some really tough feedback that they weren't expecting. Maybe you need to take them off a client account because there's been a conflict of interest. Maybe you need to shift them to deal with different internal stakeholders, different internal clients, because there has been a conflict of personality. Whatever it might be, intentionality can support you to deliver that unexpected news or updates to your teams. I've already talked a little bit about how it can support you to get through individual or team conflict, but using words and phrases that's going to support a particular outcome that benefits everyone's interests is really going to help when we think about intentionality. How do we want people to feel going through disagreement? How do we get people to feel aligned, to be on the same page, to feel that maybe a process is fair? Is that about giving everybody the same airtime? Is it about saying to each person, I hear you, I understand? It's okay that there's a disagreement here about X, Y, or Z. So using, again, all of those skills that we were talking about in the previous module, navigating uncertainty in decision making also is supported by intentionality. So where we need to make tough decisions, how are we coming up with those decisions? Is it based on the what, or is it based on how we want the change to feel or be welcomed, or the response of some change that we might be implementing? So navigating through uncertainty and taking people through a journey of uncertainty, if we can understand how people might feel about that, if we can understand the decisions that we need to make in order to support that uncertainty as well, and we can really connect to people and understand, okay, we've got someone who's feeling really disheveled, or they're on the floor, they've got no energy for a new project, but we want them to be full of energy. Maybe I'm going to tell them that, yes, we have an uncertain road ahead. However, we all know you're the best person for the job. You're the person who has the most experience. We trust you. We want to support you in how you're growing in your leadership role as a manager. And I'm going to be here to support you through that. And I know there's going to be tough times, but we'll get through it. Very different to just saying, okay, here's another project, go with it. Another one is understanding more about the what, i.e. the strategy, because we connect it to the how. Deepening relationships and building trust is going to be key as well, because if we are thinking about how people are feeling and tapping into their emotions, we're trying to understand them on the most basic human core level. So as you can see, there's many reasons why intentionality is not only important to elevate our communications, but it's going to support us in what we need to deliver. Let's keep moving. So, what are the questions that we can ask if we want to communicate with intentionality? So before I shared those questions around intention, what is the goal? How are we measuring success? How are we framing a particular objective, as an example? And so here, if we're thinking about how intentionality is really impactful, we're looking for two shifts here. One is that mindset shift that I've spoken about. So how do you want to change the as is of someone, the present? The second thing to ask ourselves is, how do you want the other person to feel? The responsibility shift. What do we need to ask? How do you want the other person to respond? If we do want somebody to take responsibility within the communications and the interactions, then we need to ask ourselves how we want that person to receive the communications or respond within the interactions. So, what do you want them to do? So, response in terms of that feelings and emotions. And part of that response might be to do something. It's not always the case. It might just be that you want them to make a particular shift in their feelings about something. Maybe they need to go away and reflect some more. But if you want them to do something, how are you going to essentially empower someone or incentivize them or see the thing that they need to do? When we're thinking about those questions, we can connect this to our leadership style, to our attitude, to how we show up in our leadership skin, and how this is shaping our human centered communications. We can ask ourselves, or you can ask yourself, what kind of a leader do you need to be, or do you want to be in this communication scenario? Connect it to your values. In the foundation module, you set your top 5 values, connect them to this, and also see how they're reflecting when you think about how you can communicate with intentionality, which is taking people on that mindset journey, taking people on a feelings journey, taking them from the present to the future state that you want them to be in. And with this, we need to utilize courage. We need to utilize courage to step outside our comfort zone and start communicating in a way which might feel a bit alien to us. But I'm going to show you now 7 steps to support the planning of the communications, how we can utilize intentionality. And once we have courage to keep practicing this, you will build your confidence. So just a very kind reminder to us all, 1 step at a time. So before you start with the first step, we need to remember that there is a pre-step to this, which is still looking at how you're going to do your planning with intention. Doing all of the good things that we need to do for the business is still there, like goal framing, understanding what the objectives are, what it is we're working towards, what are the key milestones, how are we going to measure success. So all of those things are happening anyway. This is not about replacing intention. It's about understanding the how we're going to get people towards the goal itself. So the first step is understanding, how do you want that person to feel, or the persons to feel? Do you want them to feel encouraged, incentivized? Do you want them to feel confidence, assurance? Do you want them to feel safe, trusted? So just answering that question of, how do you want that person to feel? Then the next step is, how do you want them to respond? So I covered this a bit earlier. Sometimes we actually want to bring about an outcome where we want someone to respond with an action. So if that's the case, then how are we going to shape our communications in a way where we are invoking somebody to take responsibility? So that's the responsibility shift that we might be looking for. The third part is preparing for the communication scenario. I cannot stress this enough. This is going to be a new way of planning your communications, a new way of thinking about communicating and interacting with people, or maybe on your project or your program. So really being prepared in using intentionality. So what I would suggest is taking a piece of paper and splitting it into 2. And on the left-hand side, think about those first 2 questions. How do I want the person to feel? How do I want them to respond? So the mindset shift and the responsibility shift. Then on the other side, write down the what you're going to say and see if it matches into the left-hand side of intentionality. So like how they feel, what are their emotions, etc. And also then you can look at that and say, does that align with my core values as well? So really allowing and giving yourself time to prepare. Get yourself mentally ready. I cannot stress what a difference this makes if you give yourself a pause, a deep breath, even before the moment you're going to share something with someone. Go and take a 10-minute walk outside, get some fresh air, eat some lunch, whatever it is. Ensure that you're mentally ready and that you're in the best mental state as possible, as far as possible, because if you're not in the best state possible, then you're going to be subconsciously passing on that energy, which could put the person on edge as well. So this is a really important one, that you're mentally ready. And being mentally ready as well does mean feeling prepared. If you're feeling unprepared, how mentally ready are you? Coming back to my favorite skills, empathy, active listening, getting their perspective. What we want to do is have enough space here to ask curious questions that allow us to understand more the situation and the reality of what's happening for the person or persons on the other side. If our team is grappling with a particular process, or they are unable to onboard certain stakeholders into a particular process, they're having challenges with their plan. Okay, you might be annoyed or fed up that it's taken them months to get to this point, but allow them some space, understand what the challenges are, ask them questions, be there for them. Do that without judgment, and really give them the confidence that you are there for them and that you are there for them without judgment, so that they can be honest and express openly. So getting perspective and understanding their viewpoints and their experience in whatever the context is going to be super important to reach the outcome of the mindset shift that you're looking for. Implement holistic strategic planning. So, what I mean here is looking at structure. So, if you need time to prepare under step 3, don't organize a meeting in 30 minutes' time if you need to speak to someone about something important. So, getting meetings into the diary for a good amount of time that's appropriate and relevant, giving yourself some time to plan, and also organizing any other stakeholders that might also need to be in that particular interaction or forum. So just being very well organized and giving yourself the best possibility to the outcome that you're looking for. Assess what worked, refine and test strategies. So you're seeing a theme here, right? So once you've tested this, you've had the courage to go out there and push yourself outside of your comfort zone, deal with uncertainty, and it's awkward at first. Practice is going to help you, and you can test things. You can test specific statements. You can test how you're sitting, or your body language, or your cues. You can test your eye contact. You can test, whether sitting is good, whether standing is better, whether that coffee idea is actually going to work. So assess what worked, keep refining, and keep testing those strategies. So let's move on and assess how human centered you are. I know that this can feel quite tough when we're looking at ourselves and we're understanding, are we truly present for someone? Are we really listening to them? Are we really able to connect to their emotions and their feelings and take them on a journey of change within their mindset, and maybe impacting the way they take action or responsibility for themselves or for others? That's quite a tough challenge. It's quite a big ask. So really be kind to yourself in this process as well. But think about a recent situation where you didn't necessarily get the response that you were planning for. And look again at those questions that's under that mindset and that responsibility shift, and see if there's something you could have done differently. Was there something missing? Could you have added something in? Could you have said something in a different tone? What if you'd taken someone to a different place? How could all of these things support you from an intentionality perspective? And that's going to support you as well to understand how human centered are you. But again, lots of kindness here. No one's saying that you're not human centered, but there's always room for improvement. Then this is where you can start putting your 7-step planning into action. Think about a scenario that's upcoming where you need to take people on a bit of a journey. Maybe it is a difficult conversation you need to have. Maybe you want to do things differently in a team meeting. Maybe you want to empower them. You want to increase the energy. You want them to feel energized about new targets that have come into play. Whatever it is, think about an upcoming scenario that you're a bit nervous or worried about, and use that 7-step planning to essentially prepare you, and make sure you also give yourself enough time to prepare, and that you also get some feedback as well to continually refine for the next similar scenario. And that's it. So we're wrapping up. Key takeaways. Leadership skills or a leadership style. I was looking for my words there. Leadership style, approach, attributes, the way they communicate is centered around human, personal needs. And that's what's going to build key trusted relationships across the business and also outside of the organization as well, potentially with clients and colleagues across the landscape. If we focus on human response, then we can understand how we can create more impact. Second takeaway. And the third one is planning. Use the 7-step guide to plan your communications. Planning is key because you feel prepared. It gives you a bit more confidence to go out there and be more courageous to practice. So they're my 3 takeaways. And so now it's up to you to take some self-reflection and really look at what's your key takeaways from today. And thank you. This masterclass is complete. Great work. And you are now ready to move into Masterclass 4, where we'll be transforming you into a storyteller.